विश्वपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य पुष्पोत्तर श्री श्रीमद अभय चरण जय ओम विश्वपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर श्री श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत गोस्वामी ठाकुर श्री प्रभुपाद की अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की श्री वृंदावन धाम की नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जगन्नाथपुरी की गंगा मई की जमुना मई की भक्ति देवी की तुलसी देवी की समवेता भक्तवृंद की taking over the world worship Prabhupada Sanskrit book distribution Daivanashram farm communities ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gaurango. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swamiti Namane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 14, Text number 12. Bhartari āpta-urumānānām lokān āviśate yaśaḥ patiḥ bhavat-vidhaḥ yāsām prajayā nanu jāyate āpta-urumānānām lokān āviśate yaśaḥ patir bhavat-vidho yāsām prajayā nanu jāyate bhartary āpta-urumānānām lokān āviśate yaśaḥ patir bhavat-vidho yāsām prajayā nanu jāyate bhartary āpta-urumānānām lokān āviśate yaśaḥ patir bhavat-vidho yāsām prajayā nanu jāyate. Please repeat.
Bhartari-āpta-urumānānām lokān āviśate yaśaḥ patir bhavat-vidho yāsām prajayā nanu jāyate Bhartari-āpta-urumānānām lokān āviśate yaśaḥ patir bhavat-vidho yāsām prajayā nanu jāyate Bhartari-āpta-urumānānām lokān āviśate yaśaḥ patir bhavat-vidho yāsām prajayā nanu jāyate Bhartari-āpta-urumānānām lokān āviśate yaśaḥ patir bhavat-vidho yāsām prajayā nanu jāyate Bhartari-āpta-urumānānām lokān āviśate yaśaḥ patir bhavat-vidho yāsām prajayā nanu jāyate
bhartari
bhartari āpta-urumānānām
lokān āviśate
yaśaḥ
patir bhavat-vidho yāsām
patir bhavat-vidho yāsām prajayā nanu jāyate
bhartary
bhartari
by the husband.
by the husband
āpta-urumānānām
āpta-urumānānām
of those who are beloved.
of those who are beloved
Lokān
lokān
in the world.
in the world
āviśate
āviśate
spreads.
spreads
yaśaḥ
yaśaḥ
fame. patiḥ husband. bhavat-vidhaḥ like your good self. yāsām of those whom. Sorry. Prajayā by children. Nanu certainly. Jāyate expands. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. A woman is honored in the world by the benediction of her husband. And a husband like you will become famous by having children because you are meant for the expansion of the living entities. Purport. According to Ṛṣabhadeva, one should not become a father or mother unless one is confident that he can beget children whom he can deliver from the clutches of birth and death. Human life is the only opportunity to get out of the material scene, which is full of miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease. Every human being should be given the opportunity to take advantage of this human form of life, and a father like Kaśyapa is supposed to beget good children for the purpose of liberation. Verse number 13. That is 12, 13, 14. So, Pura pita no bhagavan daksho duhitri vatsalaha kamrinita varam vatsa ityabhrichatana pritak. In days long ago, our father, the most opulent Daksha, who was affectionate to his daughters, asked each of us separately whom we would prefer to select as our husband. Purport. It appears from this verse that free selection of husband was allowed by the father, but not by free association. The daughters were asked to separately submit their selection of a husband who was famous for his acts and personality. The ultimate selection depended on the choice of the father. Verse number 14. Saviditvatma janamno bhavam santana bhavanaha trayo dashadadattasam yaste shilam anuvrataha. Our well-wishing father, Daksha, knowing our intentions, handed over 13 of his daughters unto you, and since then we have all been faithful. Purport. Generally, the daughters were too shy to express their opinions before the father, but the father would accept the daughter's intentions to someone else, such as the grandmother, to whom the grandchildren had free access. King Daksha collected the opinions of his daughters and thus handed over 13 to Kaśyapa. Every one of Diti's sisters was a mother of children. Therefore, since she was equally faithful to the same husband, why should she remain without children? Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sapatam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutaf Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishavamsha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagan Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Ṛṣabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sandhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swamniti Namine Harijana Gana Badi Gnana Karmanda Hari Prakatita Parabhaktir Bhakti Siddhanta Kantihi Vinay Nikara Lakshmir Nimna Maidai Ragamyo Bhuvi Jayati Vikaso Bhakti Purvo Yatindra Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminati Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paśyati Deshtarine Vagisha Yasya Vatane Lakshmi Yasya Chivakshasi Yasha Hridaya Samvittam Narsimham Aham Bhaje Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karti Vachalam Pangam Langaite Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Yashadevi Parabhaktir Yata Devi Tata Guru Tasyate Katita Hyarta Prakashante Mahatmanaha. So, a woman is honored in the world by the benediction of her husband, and a husband like you will become famous by having children because you are meant for the expansion of living entities. So Prabhupada opens up this purport quoting Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, text number 18. If you could please pull that up. This is a very famous verse, and everyone who's getting married, who has gotten married, and who's also not gotten married should know this verse. You can see, go to the Sanskrit, please. Guror na sasyat, swajano na sasyat, pita na sasyat, janani na sasyat, daivam na tatsyan, na patisya sasyan, namo chayatya samupetya mrityum. Translation. One who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a father, a spiritual master, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod. Purport. Prabhupada says, there are many spiritual masters, but Ṛṣabhadeva advises that one should not become a spiritual master who is unable to save a disciple from the path of death. Unless one is a pure devotee of Krishna, he cannot save oneself from the path of repeated birth and death. Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mam eti sarjana. One can stop birth and death only by returning home back to Godhead. However, who can go back to Godhead unless he understands the Supreme Lord and True Janma Karma Chame Divyam? Evam yuvati tatvataha. We have many instances in the history elaborated Ṛṣabhadeva's instructions. Shukracharya was rejected by Bali Maharaj due to his inability to save Bali from the path of repeated birth and death. Shukracharya was not a pure devotee, he was more or less inclined to fruitive activity, and he objected when Bali Maharaj promised to give everything to Lord Vishnu. Actually, one is supposed to give everything to the Lord because everything belongs to the Lord. Could you please go further down, Prabhu? Okay. Okay. Similarly, the wives of the Brahmanas who were performing sacrifices gave up their relatives just to satisfy Krishna. There's an example of a wife rejecting a husband who cannot deliver her from impending dangers of birth and death. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj rejected his father and Bharat Maharaj rejected his mother. Janani sasyat. The word daivam indicates a demigod or one who accepts worship from a dependent. Ordinarily, the spiritual master, husband, father, or superior relatives accept worship from an inferior relative. But here Ṛṣabhadeva forbids this. First, the father, spiritual master, or husband must be able to release a dependent from repeated birth and death. If he cannot do this, he plunges himself into the ocean of reproachment for his unlawful activities. Everyone should be very responsible and take charge of his dependents, just as a spiritual master takes charge of his disciples or a father takes charge of his son. All these responsibilities cannot be discharged honestly unless one can save the dependent from repeated birth and death. So that's a very important point. That, you see, many people nowadays, it says in Kali Yuga, people will get married only for the sake of sex attraction. That's the only reason people get married, for the sake of sex attraction. And as long as the sex attraction is there, then the family life is going nicely. But then the minute the sex attraction is not there, immediately the family falls apart. So the Bhagavatam says this is one of the symptoms of Kali Yuga. And then another great qualification which is required for marriage, the one and only qualification in Kali Yuga is, what is it? That's right, in money we trust. So as long as there's enough money, a person has all good qualities. The entire section of the description of the qualities of Kali Yuga, you can pull that up if you don't mind. It's the last, if you go to Canto 12 and you look at the table of contents, it says description of the Kali, age of Kali. But in this verse it says that money will be the main thing which will help us understand. At the last chapter, second to last chapter, I think. Symptoms of Kali Yuga. Second chapter, sorry. Okay, so verse number 2. Okay, there you go. In Kali Yuga, wealth alone. Okay, vittam. Okay, all right, let's do it. Vittam eva kalo nirnam janmachara gunodayaha dharma nyaya vyavasthayam karanam balam evahi. In Kali Yuga, wealth alone will be considered the sign of a man's good birth, proper behavior, and fine qualities. And law and justice will be applied only on the basis of one's power. If you don't have money, you don't have justice. If you have money, you have justice. So what does that mean? There is no justice. So we understand this, that wealth is considered to be the number one quality. That's why you see, nowadays within the society of devotees, a very famous saying is there. That the famous saying is, your career is your devotional service. So if you have a good career, then your career is your devotional service. So, could that be true? Yes, I guess, for someone like Bhaktivinoda Thakur or someone who's fully following, the principles of a grihastha, having children only for the sake of procreation, not recreation. So, got to be careful with that. Someone who's following sex life only for the sake of procreation and not recreation, and bringing children only for the sake of bringing them up in Krishna consciousness, and performing the activity of sex only for the sake of creating Krishna conscious progeny. That's why Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, I am sex life, not contradictory to religious principles. And the Sanskrit for this is, dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharat-Ṛṣabha. That Krishna says he is sex life, not contrary to religious principles. Dharma viruddho bhuteshu. So now, my dear friend, before you go up to saying your career is your devotional service and stuff like that, let's see if you're following the act of dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharat-Ṛṣabha. Are you following that act or not? So now let's see, what is the test? What is the, hey, Alex, please come. Get ready. Having a party here. So we see that, okay, so dharma viruddha bhuteshu. So now what does Prabhupada say? That every grihastha must do what? First principle. First thing, huh? That's all that is there. One more thing. Must donate 50% of the income for the propagation of Krishna consciousness, right? That's what Prabhupada writes in his books. It's all over the place. I'm not making this up, right? But we see how many people are actually doing that. But no, Prabhu, career is your devotional service. So you're performing your career, but you're not even following what Prabhupada wants you to follow. So what is this? Your career is your fruitive activity, and you're, instead of teaching, see, Krishna consciousness in the mood and mission, His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Maharaj writes how Krishna is Krishna Bhavanamrita Sangha. It's basically a play in Hindi, that's what it's called, right? Krishna Bhavanamrita Samaj or Samaj or Sangha? Sangha. Krishna Bhavanamrita Samaj. Basically, the bhava that you get from discussing about Krishna, the nectar, the amrita that you get from discussing topics of Krishna, it gives rise to bhava. That bhava is like nectar. Krishna Bhavanamrita Sangha. So it's an association where you're supposed to promote pure devotional service. Anyabhilashita shunyam. Right? That's what pure devotional service is. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktiruttama. Right? So we are supposed to follow pure devotional service without any tinges of jnana or karma. That's the point. Without any tinges of jnana or karma, we should follow pure devotional service. So then, all right, then we see, oh, Prabhu, everyone cannot follow pure devotional service. And then another famously misquoted verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is probably the most exploited verse for the career is your devotional service people. It's akama sarva kamova, moksha kama udaridi, tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. So now the twisted meaning of this verse is that, no matter what your desires are, you perform devotional service. And whatever you're doing is devotional service. But actually, no. If you have mixed desires, you have no material desires. If you are full of material desires, then you have to perform intense devotional service for the purification of these so-called material desires, right? That's what the verse says. But because there is no tivra bhakti being performed, then where is the question of arising pure devotional service? Then from Shuddha Bhakti, it goes to Mishra Bhakti, right? It goes to Karma Mishra Bhakti. And now, unfortunately, like Bhakti Vikas Maharaj pointed out many times, it becomes, instead of Shuddha Bhakti, it should be Shuddha Bhakti. Then, all right, then it sometimes becomes Karma Mishra Bhakti. And then it becomes Bhakti Mishra Karma. That, you're performing your karmic activities and you just add a little bhakti to it. So ultimately you're performing karma, but chant a little Hare Krishna. That's what it comes down to. But we see that ultimately what's the whole sake of marriage? Shastra says, putrarte kriyate bharya, putra pinda prayojanaha. The whole reason for getting a wife is to get a son. Putrarte kriyate bharya, putra pinda prayojanaha. In Krishna conscious sense, you can get a daughter also who is a devotee, pure devotee of Krishna. That also is there. But we see that the whole purpose of getting a wife is to have children. But nowadays we see so many couples, they go on, they don't have children. Sometimes they can't have children, that's unfortunate. But even if they can, they prefer not to. They prefer no, because it is sinful. You can't accept the touch of the soft skin of a woman without giving her children. It's sinful to do so. But this is going on. This is going on. Why? Because like this verse says, now you can look at the next verse, please, in the Bhagavatam. Dampadyate biruchir hetur mayeva vyavaharike stritve pumstve cha hiratir vipratve sutram evahi. Men and women will live together merely because of superficial attraction, and success in business will depend on deceit. Womanliness and manliness will be judged according to one's expertise in sex. A man will be known as a Brahmana just by his wearing a thread. So when the money culture becomes prominent, then all these things become prominent. This is just a byproduct. Why? Because Kali sits in these places. And so it just becomes a byproduct of all this. Then immediately, Prabhu was telling us about, Vishnachitra Prabhu was telling us yesterday about how, this husband trained his wife, the wife got a job, he paid for his wife to go to college, and then the wife goes to college, and then he takes care of the household duties, and the wife goes for the job. And then all this for the sake of helping with the household finances. When he asked for her to help with the household finances, the whole household fell apart. The whole household fell apart. Why? Because this is a very contaminating thing. It's a very contaminating thing. Right? We should not get into this whole realm of social life, especially grihastha life, if we cannot deliver our dependence on the cycle of birth and death, from the clutches of birth and death. This is a very serious thing. That's why Shastra says, putra and mutra, they come out of the same place. Right? The sun and urine come out of the same place. Right? That's what Shastra says. The sun and urine come out of the same place. So if the son is not a devotee, and if he's not able to deliver you, if you're not able to deliver him from the cycle of birth and death, and he's not taking him to Krishna consciousness, then it's as good as urine. Because sun and urine come from the same place. So now we can see that if you're not taking on to Krishna consciousness, our life is as good as urine. It really is. So we must understand these points very seriously. This is a very heavy statement. Chanakya Pandit says, what's the use of having a son who's not a learned scholar or a religious man? Right? We just read that yesterday, right? Yesterday we were reading that. What is the use of having a son who's not a scholar or a religious man? It simply causes disturbance in the family life. So one must not think, these are heavy statements and only brahmacharis quote this when they're amongst brahmacharis and all this. No. This is what Shastra says. Prabhupada is writing this right here in these purports. See? He's saying this human life is the only opportunity to get out of the material scene, which is full of miseries of birth, death, old age, and diseases. That's why we say, of course, time and again, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would quote this. I was thinking, at least within 5 lectures, every 5 lectures I've heard of Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, he always quotes, Labdhvasu durlabham, idam bahusam bhavante, manusham artadam anityam api hadira, turnam yatetana patet anumrityu yavan nishreyasaya vishaya kalu sarvatasyat. 11.9.29 of the Srimad Bhagavata. It's a very important verse. We see over here, 11.9.29. Translation is, after many births and deaths, one achieves the rare human form of life, which although temporary affords one the opportunity to attain the highest perfection. Thus a sober human being should quickly endeavor for the ultimate perfection of life as long as his body, which is always subject to death, has not fallen down and died. After all, sense gratification is available in the most abominable species of life, whereas Krishna consciousness is possible only for a human being. So now we have this human birth. Therefore, we should do whatever it takes in order to make it work. This is very important. Idam shariram parinama peshalam patat avashyam satasandhi jarjaram kim aushadam prichati mudha durmate Niramayam Krishna Rasayanam Piba. That after this body initially is very beautiful when it's young. Oh, idam shariram parinama peshram. Oh, it's so nice. But then patatya vasham satasanji jarjaram. But then this body that we have, all the joints in the body are going to be stiffed up. They're going to be stiffened up, and you're going to become old, shriveled, disgusting, and ugly, right? And then it's not going to be so ecstatic. You can't enjoy the sense objects so much. So then, why, you fool, are you simply looking for medicines in this material world? Kim aushadam prichati mudha durmate niramayam Krishna rasayanam piba. Why instead of going after this medicine and that medicine, why don't you take the elixir of Krishna Katha? Why don't you take the elixir of the Srimad Bhagavatam? Why don't you take the elixir that's found in Srila Prabhupada's books? Why don't you take the nectar of Krishna consciousness? Why not? What better thing is there? You can take a medicine, you'll fall sick. Take a medicine, you'll fall sick. That doesn't mean you should not maintain your body. You should maintain your body, and the Bhagavatam says that too. Actually, Shukracharya says that to Bali Maharaj, but Prabhupada writes a Purport thing. Yeah, okay, he's not wrong. Because Shukracharya says to Bali Maharaj that, you see, ultimately the goal of a tree is to enjoy the fruit. But if you don't have the tree, how will you get the fruit? You'll need to have the tree to get the fruit. And therefore you need to have the body to get whatever dharma, artha, kama, or moksha. Right? So we do maintain the body. It's not like we don't care about our health or anything. No, we do. But to a level-headed, balanced way. In a level-headed, balanced way, if we do it, then we'll be actually able to use this human form of life properly to transcend the miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease. Now, one way we can look at this verse also is that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, I just looked it in, that Diti is asking Kaśyapa for a son, because she said, you just see, from the womb of a woman, a great husband like you is born, Kaśyapa. A great husband like you is born from the womb of a woman. So now, there's a verse in the Aitreya Upanishad where it says that the father comes again in the womb of his wife. That when the husband and the wife procreate, the son is to be considered the father. That's why we see that in marriages, if the father passed away, the son can give the sister away in marriage. You see, this is just why. Because the son is considered to be a representative of the father. The son. And that's why we can see this, that who's Suta Goswami's father? Huh? That's right, Romaharshana. Romaharshana, Suta, he's Suta Goswami's father. And then what happened to him? By Balaram, right? But then, why did they choose Suta Goswami? Why did they choose Suta Goswami to represent Romaharshana? He's his son. So, and what happens is the Brahmanas go to Balaram and said, then, we blessed him to have a long life and to speak these Vedas, but you killed him. So, can you do something to fix the situation? He said, no problem. The son is a representative of the father. So just put the son on the Vyasa and he give him that benediction and everything goes on. So we see, so she's asking him for, my dear Lord, please, you're such a great personality. You appeared in the womb of a woman. So therefore, please also bless me with sons, who will be like you. Unfortunately for Diti, her sons weren't like Kaśyapa. But her grandsons were. Her grandsons were like Kaśyapa. But we see that she's pleading him. She's pleading him, my dear husband. Give me, and it's a duty. It's a duty of the husband to give children to the wife. If he doesn't do so, then it becomes a problem. If he doesn't do so, it'll become a problem. But then again, we can say that a person must be trained. A person must be trained in the principles of Krishna consciousness to beget good children. A person must be trained. If he's not trained in Krishna consciousness, then they'll just beget children, like Prabhupada says, like cats and dogs. We see that sex life is simply used for the sake of recreation. And what's that? Guru Maharaj quotes. It says, John Lennon, most children are born on a bottle of whiskey on a Saturday night. Yeah, most children are born like that. And then when children are born like that, then it's just unwanted population. Adharma bhavat Krishna pradushyanti kulastriyaha stishu dushasu varshnaya jāyate varnasankaraha. Then you have unwanted population. And then from unwanted population comes what? More unwanted population. And then it just increases more and more and more and more. And then it creates havoc in society. It creates havoc in society. It's not something desirable. It's not that, oh yes, we should get married and we should have children. We can say that even the prachetas, when they were asked to beget children, they didn't like, all right, great, let me have sex. They didn't do that. What did they do? They went and they performed austerity for the purification of consciousness. Unfortunately, we are so contaminated by the overly sexed out society. Everything overly everything becomes about sex in society. Everything becomes about sex in society. And the more we see the society, the more it degrades more and more and more and more. We were discussing just recently that the way the Mataji is dressing in university, so one Prabhupada disciple was telling us, the way the women are dressing in society, in university now, they used to have to pay money to go see women dressed like that. But now they're just dressed like that outside. Isn't that's really bad? It's really bad. That they come, they go outside, they dress like this. And what does that mean? That they themselves are decreasing their self-worth. And then what does that mean? Then that means they're being exploited. And when they're being exploited, they're not going to be happy. And when they're being exploited, then if there's children, they may kill the child. If they're unable to kill the child, like I know one devotee whose mother, they used contraception, and they also tried to abort him, but somehow the operation couldn't go through and he was born. So this is, and it just gets bad. It's really heavy. It's really heavy. And it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse as generation of time goes on. That is why there needs to be an educated class of people who can actually put society back in shape. That's the importance of this Krishna consciousness movement. That's the importance of this Krishna consciousness movement. That we need to be able to replace the moral and social values of people by putting Krishna in the center. The minute we put Krishna in the center, and we put Krishna's culture in the center, instead of money culture, if we have Krishna culture, then it was such a good point that we were seeing. Prabhus went and visited these Bruderhofs, these people who are a Christian group. They live. Where did you go? Tennessee. Where did you go? Yeah, somewhere there you go, Tennessee again. Right? In Tennessee, these Bruderhofs are living, and there is a society without any money. They don't have any money. They don't own anything, right? They change their houses, but they're family people. They have like a maximum of 4 children, right? You said they have so many children. They have children. Their men are happy. Their women are happy, and it goes on generation after generation. Why? Because this money culture is removed, and they keep a God-centered culture. And yes, they drink wine. Yes, they eat beef. Yes, they do all these things. But just because the contaminating effect of the money culture is not there, there's so much less anxiety in the society. That you were telling me there's no crime in the society also, right? There's no crime in the documentary that you sent us. There's no crime, no divorce. Wow. Sounds so much amazing, but we think, oh no, we need this, we need that, oh this, that. We think like this, and people are not trained. And when people are not trained, then it just becomes worse and worse and worse and worse. We can say that before it was a great honor for a Brahmana to clean the Lord's temple. It's a great honor for the Brahmana to they feel great joy in glimpses of traditional Indian life. There's a picture of this really old and venerable looking Sri Vaishnava, a big tilak, he's standing there. And one of his services is that he takes water from the Kaveri and climbs up all these stairs to go give it to the Ranganath deity to bathe. And then in that interview, Bhakti Vikas Maharaj is asking him, so what about, you're so old, how come you're still doing this service? Or something along these lines, he was asked. And he said, Lord Narayana wants our 100% surrender. He doesn't want our surrender until before we become old or only when we're healthy. No, He wants our surrender to Him all the time. Therefore, I will continue doing my service till I die. So this is the mood. This is the mood. There's that mood of imbibing the Vedic culture. There's a mood of imbibing the Vedic culture. And when that mood of Vedic culture is imbibed, then naturally one of the very common things I've seen, especially, I guess I can compare the Matajis that we're seeing out there today to the women that we grew up around, like my mother, my grandmother. There's like a big culture of selflessness, right? Vedic culture, it instills selflessness in you. I can see, for example, the difference between my mother and someone else I could compare her to of this generation, someone I know. And I can just see, and you know, this person's husband was also telling me that the difference between a woman like my mother and the woman that we were talking to is so different, because before there was a culture of selflessness, completely selfless. Like my mom would do so much, she would just constantly do something or the other to serve the children, to serve the husband, to serve the grandfather, to serve the in-laws, to serve the relatives. Constantly service, something or the other is constantly going on. But now, when women start to have their own money, they start to have their own job, they start to have their own security, they have to have this and that and this and that. They start to have own this, own that, own this, own that. And immediately it becomes a culture of selfishness. Immediately, selfishness. Selfishness creeps in. And then there's no question of submissiveness. And then instead of being someone who's supposed to cooperate and be submissive to the husband, women become competitors to the husband. A man doesn't want to live with a competitor at home. If you go home, you don't want to live with a competitor. You know? But the minute she becomes a competitor, then everything becomes hellish. You know, I know one person who basically takes care of his son. He has a wife, but he basically cooks for his son, takes care of his son, does all this the whole day. And then at night, he starts working his job, IT job. And sometimes we stay in his place. We come back late from book distribution, and then and we're going to sleep, let's just say at around 10 or 10:30, and he's just like firing up his computer. And then we wake up from Mangalarati, and he's still there working. And then he sleeps for a few hours, and he wakes up, and he again continues to take care of his son and daughter. What's the wife doing? Bullying him. Doesn't cook. Wife doesn't cook. She just bullies him, does half the work that he does for the kids, and also works a job. So this is something we're able to see with our own eyes within generations. The difference between selfishness and selflessness. So much. Such a stark difference. And the more the money, and then the same thing. If a brahmachari is collecting a lot of money, if a brahmachari is distributing lots of books, and he starts to think, I am the one providing for the temple, that money culture influences him. And when that money culture influences him, then he starts to lord it over other people. When he starts to lord it over other people, then he starts to become a demon in the name of devotional service. Harijana dvesh pratisthasha klesh. Ki kare kena taha tadrisha kare kena tabe tahara gaurava. Then he actually starts to despise and starts to have a serious problem with and becomes envious of the Harijanas, of those who are the Harijanas, the Vishnu Janas, those who are serving the Supreme Lord, those who are serving the spiritual master. Harijana dvesh. He starts to become envious and hateful towards the people who are serving the spiritual master selflessly. Harijana dvesh. Pratisthasha klesh. He starts to have this tendency, this klesha, right? Klesho dikaratas tesham. Krishna uses the word klesha. And also we know the word klesha from Adhyatmik. Okay, right? So there's a problem, right? It's a klesha, it's a problem. So Harijana dvesh, you start to have a hateful, envious, exploitative mentality towards those who are selflessly serving the spiritual master. Harijana dvesh. And then you have a klesha of pratisthasha. You have a klesh, this anartha, this unwanted desire of pratisthasha, desiring fame, reputation, honor. Pratisthasha klesh. Karakena taha tomara gaurava. That why are you performing all these activities? Simply for the sake of getting some kind of mundane so-called prestige? Why do you suffer torment by desiring honor that's awarded to those devotees who are selflessly serving the spiritual master? Why? What's the need? What's the point? Harijana dvesh pratisthasya klesh. Kara kinata betahara gaurava. Vaishnavera pache pratisthasya ache. That naturally behind the Vaishnava comes pratisthasya ache. Tata kinatahe jadera vaibhava. One must never consider the opulence that a Vaishnava receives, or the pratishtha, or the name or fame that a Vaishnava receives, to be false opulence. One should never consider that. One should never consider that. But then if a person, just because they're influenced by this money culture, then what happens, they may be like a sweet and a humble brahmachari in the beginning, performing service, then all of a sudden, like an ox who doesn't know its own power, like when an ox is young, the ox doesn't know his own power, so he's just like going and playing around, but he's actually doing a lot of damage. But then once he starts to realize his own power, the ox becomes very proud. When the ox becomes very proud, then he starts to like really show off. Right? And we were distributing books, and then there was a Goshala nearby. So we went, and every day before we started our book distribution, we'd go and we would feed the cows and the oxen. And the minute you start to take the bananas towards one ox, the bigger guy comes and like, boom, boom, like hits, like pushes this dude away with his strength. And then like this guy goes away a little bit, and you have to like give him a little and give him the other piece. And like, so the the ox realizes his strength, and he starts to have the domineering mentality. He starts to have this domineering mentality. And then when this domineering mentality comes, then one starts to think, Amito Vaishnav. I'm a Vaishnava. E buddhi hoile. Amito Vaishnava. With such, I am a Vaishnava. E buddhi hoile. Amani na koibo ami. That he starts to think, oh, Amito Vaishnava. I'm a Vaishnava. I should be given reputation. Where's my garland? Where is my Pada Puja? Where is this? Where is that? Amito Vaishnava. Why am I not allowed to give class? Right? Amito Vaishnava. E buddhi hoile. Amani na hoibo ami. Then what happens is, then this desire for name and fame pollutes the heart. And then when it pollutes the heart, then they start to lose the potency or the capability of receiving the blessings of the Vaishnava, Hari Guru and Vaishnavas. Why? Because this money culture is so contaminating. It's so contaminating. So one must be very careful of these things. One must be very careful of these things. One may not even notice how the money culture influences the brain. And when money culture is there, then what ends up happening is Kali sits there. And when Kali sits there, one is destroyed. Se Hari Sambandha Shunya Maya Gandha. That the relationship that a Vaishnava has with Lord Hari is Shunya Maya Gandha. Not even a trace of illusion. Not even a trace of illusion. Not even a small trace. But then what happens? What happens? And this is true. We are speaking from a brahmachari perspective, because we're almost all of us in this room are brahmacharis. But then we can see from the platform of a woman. When the minute that she starts to actually associate and starts to try to have a domineering mentality in the family, the whole family unit is destroyed. It's completely destroyed. Matsarata vashe tumi jade rase. Then under the sway of envy, why? Because the minute one thinks, why are they getting honored? I should be getting honored. Matsarata vase, under the sway of envy, tumi jade rase, then we go behind jada rasa. Why we see this, that in Vedic culture, even though it's just like Hindu culture with like Sai Baba and this and that and all this other stuff, still there's some sense that the wife thinks that no matter what, I need to be selfless towards my husband. I need to be selfless towards my husband. I need to like respect him. I need to honor him. And I need to serve him. Even if they have like no conception of philosophy or anything, right? Even if they have no conception of philosophy, still they're, I have to serve my husband. I have to serve my husband. I have to serve my husband. I have to serve my wife. And one devotee was telling me that when he saw the Indian, he saw that with his parents, even if the husband and wife had like his mother and father had a rumbling of a cloud kind of an argument, then there was no question of the wife not cooking for the husband, the mother not cooking for the father. There was no question. But when him and his wife have a fight, she says, I'm not going to cook for you. One may think, what's the big deal? Go to Subway, bro. But no, it's a big deal. It's very bad. It's very bad. You know that a person, if they don't want to, if the wife doesn't want to cook for the husband just because she had some kind of a disagreement with him, that is terrible. It's completely terrible. But we see that this is how the culture is degrading more and more and more and more. Matsarata vashe tumi jade rase. So out of a desire, out of envy for whatever it may be, out of envy towards the Vaishnavas, envy towards the Harijanas, Matsarata vashe tumi jade. Then we go to enjoy prakrita rasa, jada rasa, dead rasa that you get from matter. And then what do? Majeche chariya kirtana shaushtava. Then you give up the glorious performance of Sankirtana. You give this up. So we see that, Prabhupada is speaking over here again and again. That we must have good prajayā. We must have all these things. Everyone must perform their roles and their duties. Everyone should perform. If you're not performing, then it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. And it's going to cause a destruction. It's going to cause destruction of the society. It's going to cause destruction of the family. These things happen all the time. And we see Prabhupada in the next Purport, he's speaking about how the wife, Prabhupada makes a very amazing point. It appears from this verse that the free selection of a husband was allowed by the father, but not by free association. Right? We see this so many times in Shastra. For example, one person who only heard about someone but wanted to get married to him was Rukmini. Devudi? No, I think the father came and offered her to Swayambhu Manu, right? To Swayambhu Manu. Yeah, she came offered him to Kaśyapa, right? Swayambhu Manu came and offered her to Kaśyapa. But we see, so Rukmini, to Kardama. Rukmini, she only heard about Krishna's glories. Immediately she was attracted. Right? Urvashi also, she heard about the glories of, what's his name in the 9th canto? Pururava. Right? She heard the glories of Pururava and she wanted to go and get married to him or get attracted to him. So they can have that desire, they can hear, they can have that desire. But then, see, Prabhupada's saying, but not by free association. This is very dangerous. When men and women start to mix freely, this becomes a recipe for disaster. My Guru Maharaj was banned from one place in America because he was in a place and he was giving a lecture, and it's basically an Indian temple, and they're all sitting, all the devotees are sitting in front of him, and they're all from South India. And then he saw that the men and women are all sitting up together, right? The husband is, the one man is sitting, other woman is sitting, another man is sitting, 2 women, 1 man, like that. They were just sitting together. And my Guru Maharaj said, can you get up and, can the women sit together and the men sit together? If you were in India, you wouldn't do this. Why are you doing it here? Why are you doing it? Who's teaching you this? Right? So very big, and they got up and they went and sat separately. But then after that, he was banned for 12 years. And then he went there, and after he went there once, he was banned again. So, why? What's the big sin? What did he ask you? Don't mix freely. Why? What ends up happening? Because your entire family unit is going to get destroyed. The family unit is going to get destroyed. Everything that you cannot have Krishna consciousness with the background of nice material life. Or you cannot have Krishna consciousness with the values of this demoniac society. You cannot have that. It is impossible. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. How can you have it? How is it possible that, yes, outside you're taught, yes, you must dominate over others. You must step over other people. You must do all these things. And then you should still be a nice, humble devotee. How does this work? We are taught all these things. We're sent to schools which are slaughterhouses. Prabhupada called schools and universities as slaughterhouses. Prabhupada told Rameshwar Prabhu that in front of every university we should have a big board which says, please come here. We will make you into a big ass. Prabhupada says that. That's what happens. Right? They're slaughtered. They're destroyed. The very perspective. Why? Because what are they taught? They're taught 2 things when they go to university. They're taught to become atheists. They're taught to become slaves. And they're taught to indulge their senses. Indulge. Now is your time to indulge. Right? Just indulge. And that's why I was talking to a devotee, and she's saying, yes, Prabhu, I just came back from, dropping my daughter off in the dorms. And I asked her, are you crazy? I straight up asked her, are you crazy? You're leaving your daughter? No, I did. I really told her that. Anyway, and after it worked out, because then now she's like going and seeing her daughter often and all this. But, I asked her, are you crazy? You're leaving your daughter in the dorms? Do you know what happens there? I went to school 10 years ago, and it was bad. Now it's way worse. It is way worse. How can you leave your daughter in the dorm? How can you leave your daughter in the dorm? What happens there? Well, some people have an American twist on things, may say, oh, well, what's the big deal? Oh, yeah, she has a boyfriend. Yeah, they may kiss every now and then. But this is crazy. For a father to do such a thing, to let the daughter in the dorm, is completely crazy. How can you do this? We may be hated. People may like, oh, get upset and this, that, and the other thing. That's okay, that's fine. But we must understand, this is a very, very dangerous situation. How can you be in charge of a family and send your kids to slaughter? Oh, yes, my son, I like you so much. Go get killed by that guy. How does this work? But this is society these days. It's society. That's why the free selection of a husband was allowed by the father, but not by free association. Not by free association. That's why what is needed, what the ultimate selection depended on the choice of the father. Whatever the father says, that's what goes. Nothing else. And then we see in this third purport, Prabhupada is writing that generally daughters were too shy. Have you ever heard of shyness? Have you ever seen shyness? It's crazy, right? And when you see a woman who's shy, like, oh, what? She's shy. She's actually shy, and I'm shocked. Sometimes, you see some Amish woman or something like that, they're seeing you and they walk the other way, like, respect, I can't give you a book right now because you're running away from me, but, Hare Krishna, I respect that, And then, you can even see, some people who still, they cover themselves properly. I was just distributing books in UTD, and then, I met this, awesome guy. He bought a Bhagavatam CC and a Sapta, and I was meeting some awesome people. And then I met this one Mataji, she was Tamilian. First girl I saw, fully clothed. Like nothing showing, all the way to full sleeves, everything. Like, Hare Krishna, yes, do you have books? I said, yeah, I have books. And, and I gave her a Sapta, and she bought the Sapta. And then she was like, doing the Tamilian bargaining thing with me. I'll only give you that. I said, bro, am I selling saris? I'm not selling saris, I'm selling books. Just buy the books for what I ask you to buy them, Stop this. You're like, oh, okay, I guess we're not buying saris right now. Whatever, right? Bought the books. Okay, and I told her, I see that you're actually very cultured. I said, do you have a boyfriend? She's like, no, I don't have a boyfriend. No question of meat, no question of intoxication. I said, you please be like this and you chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra Japa every day. Don't get degraded by this feminist Rakshasis. And I told her all that. I told her that, what to do. It's true, man. It's true. I was saying, and she appreciated, yes, it makes sense. My parents say the same thing, very nice. Okay, Jai. So, we should understand. Hey, got to keep it real out there, man. Don't get degraded by the family. And that's why Prabhupada said, he told Subhag Maharaj, he told him that, philosophy you can learn from the Americans, but culture you learn from your parents. He told them that. So we should be very, very careful. And we can see that nowadays what the Krishna consciousness, Jayadvaita Maharaj says this, and Bhakti Vikas Maharaj repeats this often, that nowadays what the Krishna consciousness movement is really missing is good grandmothers. It's a fact. And in this book called Mothers and Masters, there's a small paragraph I'd like to read. It is... Oh, okay, sorry, 1 minute. Okay, one paragraph, okay? I'll read it really fast. I respectfully submit that our senior Vaishnavis can better serve Srila Prabhupada's mission, not by trying to emulate sannyasis, but by serving as ideal grandmothers. Not someone who's divorced her husband, went and started a whole questionable, illicit business or something like that, but by serving as ideal grandmothers. Helping to guide young mothers in how to manage households expertly with unlimited warmth and affection and an exemplary Krishna-conscious manner. I remember in Charlotte, Guru Maharaj told us that when he was young, the person who was the most affectionate towards him was his grandmother. Do you remember? And he says his grandmother would always take him, feed him, take care of him so nicely. And he said when his grandmother left, he was very sad. And this is amazing. He's saying that to manage household expertly with unlimited warmth and affection, and in an exemplary Krishna conscious manner. By acting as home-based guides with small communities, senior Vaishnavis can perform a vital role in establishing Krishna conscious culture at the grassroots level in a way sannyasis cannot. You can be more than a sannyasi. Stop trying to be one. Although in emergencies anything can be done, if we are to demonstrate to the world that varnashram dharma is the most stable, satisfying, and enlightened form of social organization, then we shall have to train our men as responsible husbands and fathers, and our women as devoted wives and affectionate mothers. Trying to cast everyone into male roles, which is ludicrous, simply underlines our failure to institute varnashram dharma and our unwillingness to reverse this trend. So I'll end the class over here. If there's any questions, comments, protests, we could take them now.
It's on 3.
Wow. Really good service attitude. He's like, he doesn't skip beat.
Hare Krishna.
Pranam, Prabhu, yes.
Hare Krishna. So Prabhu, what you were saying about I know this was more this dominating mentality that can come about when in this example that Vishnu Prabhu gave with the wife who got the job and like destroyed the household. I saw it in my own family when I was younger and I had 2 sisters. Of course, like when you're kids, generally it's like everything's like you don't really know what's going on. Everything's pretty simple. You're not really considering much of anything. But there was like a really stark contrast. Like at the point my mother got like a job and she started working, she started spending more and more hours. And I would be with her pretty much all the time because she would go into school. She was a teacher. And she would leave, like, we would leave late. There would be nights. I was pretty much just used to getting home at like 8 and 9, and I was like pretty young. So I would just like read books all the time, and I would just be with her. And I would see her like just all throughout the day. She's miserable going into the job. She's miserable at the end of the day. And then she gets home and she's like super miserable. And she's always complaining that I have to deal with kids who don't respect me. And then because of that frustration, she would take it out on us.
Yeah,
because she's
and then
like,
your dad do it.
she's like, if you're not gonna, she's like, I get disrespected by kids all the day, like all the time. I'll be damned if my won't kids won't respect me. So like, and it's like that was like this whole thing. It's just like this wanting to have like that control over the kids. And anyways, like she was just very that like put like a whole rift like in my family to the point where my dad just like told her like you're done working.
There you go. That's smart man.
he
Smart
told her,
man. Yeah.
And at the point she stopped working, she was the happiest I ever saw her.
Obviously.
I'm telling you. And it was crazy.
Yeah.
It really is true. And like I saw it
Yeah.
like firsthand, I was like really amazed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's just, and that's why an important aspect in Vedic society is that a man never marries above his like guna and karma, basically. It's like he never they'll just say a man has
No out of league stuff.
yeah, exactly. He doesn't marry a woman out of his league, right? But I could see it anyway. Okay, I don't want to say it on that. But I've seen families where the man married a woman way out of his league, and the woman just, my God, doesn't stop disrespecting him in front of the kids. I mean, that's just horrible. Like just horrible. Like, how can you disrespect? And like the man, like, dude, are you really taking this? Like, why do you have to take? It's just horrible. It's just horrible. What do you do? And like, Guru Maharaj was he just gave a new lecture, dropped a bomb on the YouTube called More Marriage Advice. And there, it's just so heavy that how nowadays it's like they have to see the pay slips of the man. Then they try to make sure that, okay, you can get married, but you can't take care of your parents. And all these kinds of insane demoniac ideas. You know? So what's the worst thing? They're trying to kill the grandmother culture. The culture of having grandmothers. It's really, really terrible. Actually, yes, Prabhu.
First, I'd like to ask, where is this? You were quoting a bhajan, Hari Jana
Dvesh.
Desh.
It's called Vaishnava K by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, verse number 5.
Okay. Oh, it's in Vaishnava K. Okay. Yeah, very applicable for me.
For myself, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I was-
Yeah, bro. You. That's you right there.
well, I just wanted to comment, just to like chime in on the whole grandmother thing. Yeah, it's like so true that we're lacking grandmothers. I mean, there's a handful of I have a handful of devotee grandmothers, but
Yeah.
when Palini Mataji first came
Yeah,
here, when
my
I first
God.
had darshan of her, it was like almost like on the level of first seeing Guru Maharaj or something. Just like the kind of,
Yeah.
she doesn't demand respect, but she commands respect.
sure.
Like I like distinctly remember she stepped out of that car out there and everybody just like saw her and just like
Hit the
hit the
floor.
pavement.
Yeah.
Because she's like, and then whenever she talks, she's, you know,
You know what
everybody
that's
just
called?
like,
It's called the Gandhari effect.
Gandhari effect. Can you explain?
It's like Gandhari is so chaste that the minute she heard,
It's a Dhritarashtra's
the
wife?
minute she heard that the man she's going to marry is blind, even before she could have dipped out. And she could have said, look, I'm not going to marry a blind man. But ever since she was told that the prince of the Kurus is going to be your husband, in her mind she was fixed that this man is going to be my husband. When Bhishma came and told Gandhari's father that Dhritarashtra is blind, even before anything had happened, she immediately went and blindfolded herself because she couldn't have anything more than her husband. And then because of her chastity, she had so much mystic power. So that's the Gandhari effect. When a woman is chaste to her husband, you just like, she could curse you. She could, like, you have no idea how. Yudhishthira was scared to death of Gandhari's wrath because he knew that if this lady wants, she can burn up the universe. You know that Arjuna, when after the war was over, they went to meet Gandhari. Arjuna hid behind Krishna. Arjuna, who slay Bhishma, he got Bhishma, like there's not even like this much space in Bhishma's body with arrows. He hid behind Krishna. Gandhari effect, my friend. That's the power of women that these feminist Rakshasis don't even know about.
That woman, she stops the sun from coming up.
Yeah, literally. Yamaraj, this what's her name, bro? What's Savitri and Satyavan Savitri. Savitri is a wife and Satyavan. So she, you know the story. I think you know it better than me. I know like bits and pieces. Okay, how about let's collaborate. Okay, so I'll remember what I know and like you can fill in.
All
okay?
we know that he was cursed that he was going to die when the sun came up, and she was like, okay, the sun's not going to come up.
Yeah, that's it. And then like Yamaraj couldn't take. And what's the name of the famous Tamil Mataji who showed this, and the husband and the wife, the queen died before the king. Yeah, so many examples in history of chaste women. You cannot understand. For example, there was once a brahmachari performing austerities and all this, and very austere brahmachari or sannyasi performing austerity, very very austere sannyasi, and then like a bird pooped on his head, and he got angry. He glanced at the bird, and the bird burnt and died.
Specifically, it was a crane.
It was a crane. The crane. He glanced at the crane, and the crane just died. He just gave up his body. And then he was like, "Oh my God, brahmachari Shakti." And then and then he went begging door to door. And then he went to one door, and then the lady opened the door, and she was like, "Please wait. I'm going to serve my husband, and don't get angry and try to kill me like the way you just killed that crane." And he was like shocked, and he waited because when she was done serving her husband, she came out, and she was offering alms, and he asked her, "How did you know?" She said, "Yeah, the same Shakti that you get from performing all your sannyasi dharma and all this, I get from performing my Sri dharma." So that's the Gandhari effect. Is there anything else? Or are we out of time? We have 5 minutes. Yeah. Oh yeah, Mataji, do you have anything? Okay. Yes. No, she doesn't.
Where was it? Oh, we were hearing with them. It's in this line, the devotees that do the yagyas, benedict vatas.
Okay.
there
Gopal
was-
Bhatta.
Who was it? Their father that left, and then the mother was there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean,
So what Shamsundar Prabhu told us?
yeah.
So what happened is that this chaste wife, she was there, and she was serving her husband, and the husband, when it was time to die, he went near the family deities, offered obeisances, and he left, went to Vaikuntha. And then the wife is sleeping a few days later, and then the husband comes in her dream, and he's like, what are you doing? I'm already in Vaikuntha. Why didn't you come with me? And he told her, look, in Vaikuntha, it's like this here, it's like that there, it's like this, it's like that. And he's giving her a full description. Basically, the next chapter, recently, not like hundreds of years ago, maybe like 20, 30 years ago. And basically the 15th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is, Navani? Third canto, 15th chapter? Yeah, I remember the first time you read it, we had a long conversation. So basically, he was describing to her in detail, basically, on third canto, 15th chapter, description of the kingdom of God. And then, she was saying, and then she told that her son said, this is what, your father came, this is what he told me. And then they called the pandits over, and they said, okay, now describe what father told you in the dream. And then she gave all these verses and descriptions of Vaikuntha. And the pandits are like, how does she know all this? It took us so many years of learning, simple woman, how does she know all this? How does she know all this? Said, yeah, my husband came and told me in my dream. And then that night, she also offered obeisances in direction of her deities, and she went to Vaikuntha. That's why in Kali Yuga, the best varna is? The best ashram is? Actually, no, did they ask that? No. What the best yuga is? And the best gender is? Woman. So we say that you can see that. Why? Because that service attitude, the advancement of Prabhupada writes, the advancement of a practitioner does, Prabhupada says it depends not on the book scores, not on the Lakshmi collecting, not on how well we sing, not how well we speak, not how well we cook, but on the attitude of the practitioner. That's what it depends on. So when they have that attitude, then they can make it. If they don't have that attitude, they're doomed. So they have that service attitude. Why? Naturally, Shudras are supposed to have that service attitude. Women are supposed to have that service attitude. So now you take your advantage and flush it down the toilet. What are you doing? What are you doing? So yeah, you had the mic for something else, Chandan?
I was just saying that it actually is quite easy if one just follows according to what Krishna has given. Our nature, especially if in the body of a woman, makes it much easier. You get all the activities that the husband does well.
50% of all the husband's pious credits.
He takes your sins, right? Also
Yeah.
the husband
He takes her sins and gives 50% of her sins and 50% of all his pious activities. So where is the men's liberation movement? We need something. But yeah, you see, just follow. Swabhava Jaina Kaunteya. You just follow your Swabhava. You'll attain perfection. So it's all common sense, what Krishna teaches us. So anyway, if there's nothing else, I can end the class over here. We're 2 minutes early. Yeah, nothing else? All right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.